Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for gathering here today, and to those watching with us online, welcome to Wycombe High's very own general election. My name is Denver Vincent, and I will be chairing this afternoon's debate. However, this is not just any debate. This is a debate that will affect your lives, your education, your livelihood, and many more things. It is an opportunity for us to engage in the democratic process, to understand the importance of informed voting, and to support our peers as they present their vision for our future. Your participation today not only shapes the outcome of this election, but will affect your lives over the next 5 years. You will all have the opportunity to decide what's important to you by casting your vote. Hence, you should pay close attention to this debate. We welcome questions from the audience, and for those online, you may ask your teachers to submit a question for you. I encourage you all to listen carefully, ask thoughtful questions, and make your voice heard through your vote. And without further ado, each panel will introduce themselves. And we'll start with Ella Higley from the Conservatives.
My name is Ella Higley, and I'm the representative for the Conservatives here at Wycombe High School. We have a clear plan. Over the last 14 years, we have lowered your taxes and inflation and ensured your future is secure, with more apprenticeships, cheaper housing for first-time buyers, and achieving the title of having the fastest growing economy out of the G7 countries. With a Conservative government, our future is secure, and under any other government, that is not the case. They're empty promises made by not being based by running your country as we have been doing for the last 14 years. They have no backing, and so to vote the Conservatives will be a secure vote.
I'm Sophie Bentley, and I'm the representative of the Liberal Democrats. After 14 years of Tory tyranny, we are tired, and Labour is barely better. Why waste your vote on a Tory or Keir Starmer, a Tory in a red tie, a deal that won't benefit you as Labour and one which has failed to deliver for 14 years? We stand for equality, liberty and democracy. That is what this country needs. You have a choice to make. You are not stuck with two terrible choices. The Lib Dems are here, your local Liberal champions. With us, you are guaranteed a fair deal.
My name is Sarah, and I'm representing the Green Party at Wycombe High. We advocate for real hope and real change by pushing for a greener and fairer UK. This will be done through focusing on the future of our planet, as well as investing in a green economy and nourishing our diverse community. Real hope, real change.
I'm Jamie Hart, and I'm the representative for the Labour Party. This country needs change. After 14 years of Tory chaos, false promises, and a lack of care for the people of this country, something needs to change. The Labour Party will stop the endless chaos and kickstart the work to rebuild our country and restore people's faith in politicians. This election is about change, and Labour is the best party to deliver this change.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, can we give these panel members a warm welcome and a round of applause? Now we will begin the debate. I believe our first question is from Mr. Garrett Chapman. Could he please stand and read out his question? Oh, no, he's not here. So the question is from Mr. Garrett Chapman, why vote at all? I think we'll start with Labour. Labour, why should we vote at all?
Well, voting is about representation and having a voice. It's protecting our democracy as a country. For us, that is a key value. We believe in democracy. We are a democratic country. In order to, exercise our, rights in that, we should vote. It helps you understand and make informed decisions about politics. All of the decisions that politicians make have a direct effect on you and your family, so you should have a say in that.
Thank you, Jamie. And from the Green Party, Sarah, what do you think? Why should we vote at all?
I think voting is a fundamental part of just living in a democratic society. You get to vote for what you want in your country and how you want to live and how you want your future to be. So I think it's something that we should all do and all have the right to do, and make sure you think it through and make sure you're doing what you want to do and not picking out of two of the worst to pick out what you want.
Thank you for that. And Sophie, from the Labour Party, why should we vote at all? From the Liberal Democrats, why should we vote at all?
Politics affects every single one of us, like it or not. It's tax, it's housing, it's the cost of our food, it's human rights, it's your education. And by caring about politics, you're caring about your future. The privilege to vote is something that not everyone in this world has, and is something which a democratic right which you absolutely should use.
Thank you. And lastly, Ella Higley from the Conservative Party, why should we vote at all?
We believe that this has a simple answer. It's simply your future. If you want to invest in your future to have a greener, a more prosperous, with more opportunities, we believe that you should vote. No matter who you vote for, it's a way to voice your opinions and to get what you want to achieve out of your life. And if you have hopes and aspirations for the future, no matter who you pick, that is why you must vote.
Thank you. Very interesting takes from all the parties here. For our second question from Charlene in year 10, we have, what will you do to give people easier access to universities? I think this time we'll start with the Green Party. What will you do to give people easier access to university?
So we believe education should be accessible to everyone. So we would like to scrap uni fees and bring back maintenance grants to make it easier for everyone to get into uni, no matter what your economic and state is. And we'd also like to make bus travel free for under 18, so commuting would also be easier.
Thank you. And the Liberal Democrats, what will you do to give people easier access to universities?
In terms of university, we want to bring back maintenance grants. The cost of university shouldn't, and living shouldn't put people off achieving what they should. As well as this, education is crucial at every age. We want to give adults £5,000 to spend on additional education, which is going to help them in the long term and everyone else in the long term.
Thank you. And the Conservatives, what will you do to give people easier access to universities?
So we plan on scrapping A-levels and T-levels. We believe that the way forward is for an advanced British standard, and complementary to this, introducing an A-level of maths to ensure that you're a more competitive student. We believe that with these extra qualifications, it will allow you the better edge to be able to get into a uni of your choice. And we are also introducing, if uni is not the way for you, 100,000 more apprenticeships. We believe we shouldn't channel everybody into going into university. And if people don't feel forced into going into university and they feel like they have the option to go into apprenticeships, it will open up more opportunities for those that are set on going to those unis.
Thank you. Jamie, what about you? How will you give people easier access to universities?
Unlike the other people on this panel, I'm realistic. This country cannot afford to subsidize or scrap university fees. Universities are already struggling, so getting rid of them, it just can't happen. We can work on having, increased bursaries by cracking down on tax evasion to fund this. So more people are going to be able to access financial support so they can access university, rather than just blanket saying, oh, we're going to scrap university fees, or oh, we're going to give everyone this, when actually it's just not going to happen. And the Liberal Democrats seem to have forgotten about their 2010, when they did promise to scrap tuition fees, when in fact they tripled to £9,000. So can you trust them again to make changes?
I think it's a bit ironic we talk about being realistic. Economically, it wasn't viable to scrap tuition fees, as much as in the long term we would love that. That is why we are reinstating maintenance grants in our manifesto. It is crucial that we have realistic, costed plans, something which the Conservatives know a little bit about.
The Conservatives, do you have anything to say in response to that?
I actually do. I think that with all these grants and these bursaries, I would just like to ask, is there a secret stash of money that you guys have somewhere that the Conservatives aren't aware of? Any of these loans that we're promising not to pay back? Are we just, where are we going to get all these monies from?
We would tax your friend.
If I may give an answer to that, the Conservatives, I'm sure you're aware that you need £12.2 billion to restore our education system to the level it was in 2010. Have you got a money tree in the back of Downing Street that you're using for this?
12.2 billion, Conservatives. What do you have to say? What do you have to say about that?
I would say that you guys have no experience. You haven't had to govern. You haven't gone through an energy crisis. You haven't gone through Brexit. You haven't gone through COVID. You've had no real issues in campaigning. You campaign and you chat and you do all of this. But have you ever had to run a country? No. And I think once you're in our position, in these 14 years, we have campaigned, we have decreased inflation, we have given back money to the people. And we believe that we've had some hard times, yes, but we have got through them on the better end.
If I may add, you said that Brexit was something you had to get through. We made Brexit happen, the Conservatives. So you're just fixing the problems that you've made.
Can we say that Brexit benefited everyone in the room, economically? Are we better off after Brexit?
The Conservative does not choose Brexit. We gave you that option. We gave you the referendum, and you guys voted for Brexit.
I think that comment riled up the audience a little bit. Does anyone on the panel want to respond to Conservatives' comments? No, I think we'll move on to give Green Party a chance to speak. Question 3 from Madiha in year 7. How do you intend to tackle the alarming rise in carbon emissions? Green Party, would you like to start?
So we aim to reach net zero by 2040, which is 10 years earlier than the Tories and 5 years earlier than Lib Dems, and Labour does not specify when they want to do that. We want to do this by stopping adding to greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. We'd like to do this by putting in low carbon heating systems like heat pumps, and we will invest 40 billion per year to move to a green economy for our future.
Thank you, Green. And Labour, would you like to respond, and how do you intend to tackle the alarming rise in carbon emissions?
Well, the climate crisis is something that's real. I know, in this country, we may not be feeling it as much as people in other countries, but it is real. It's a real thing. We're not like the Conservatives. We don't have MPs who are climate deniers. But there's multiple steps that we're going to take. So we're going to be holding water companies account for their horrific pollution of rivers, which is in turn going to promote biodiversity. And again, we're realistic. Transition to green energy can't just happen overnight. It has to be as part of a transition process. So phasing out oil and gas and putting windfall tax on said oil and gas companies so we can fund GB energy, so we can harness the clean power. As a country, we've got incredible potential. We've got long coastlines. We've got a lot of wind, as you guys all know. So we should be harnessing that and using it to make clean and green energy.
Thank you. Conservatives, would you like to respond, and how do you intend to tackle the alarming rise in carbon emissions?
We believe that the Green Party has some good ideas, but they're just not realistic. We believe that it's too soon to say that these policies can be introduced that soon, and so we aim to achieve net zero by 2030, and we think that's the best way to do it. We also aim to only sell electric vehicles by 2035 and phase out oil and petrol cars. And also, we also aim to scrutinise water regulators. We are aware of the Thames Valley and the water pollution going on currently, and we've heard your voice, and we are acting on it. We aim to reduce the NHS waiting times through this. We believe that people are getting ill and people do need that extra help, and so we are aware of that. So this does coincide with that, and so we are going to reduce NHS stress by introducing new cleaner water, by giving fines to those companies that aren't following these standards that should be met, and reintroducing that back into new regulators and into the NHS.
May I ask the Conservatives a question?
Yes.
So you say your net zero targets for 2050. Can you explain how your annual licensing for the North Sea oil and gas are compatible with this?
We believe that it's hard to predict what's going to happen. We have had COVID, we have had extra strains, and so we don't think that all targets can be achieved, and so that's why we have had to be realistic. We understand that not all of our proposed ways of achieving our green policies are as soon as you guys are planning on it.
So are you saying that you're not going to be able to achieve your 2050 net zero target?
No, we think ours is the most realistic timestamp for it. And if any of you do get in power, we would like to see how you would achieve it by 2030.
Thank you for that. Before we move on, we'll have Lib Dem's opinion on the rising carbon emissions.
Carbon emissions and climate change is a massive issue right now, and we are committed to net zero by 2045. Ideally, we would have 90% of our electricity coming from renewables by 2030. We would reinstate the Conservatives' scrapped 2030 ban on selling new petrol cars, and unlike the Labour Party, would not go back on £28 billion of green energy and net zero targets.
It's just unfortunate that the Liberal Democrats haven't published their cost estimates for their net zero delivery,
We have a fully costed manifesto.
if you say so.
Thank you, panel members. Our next question will be from Dia in year 8, and it is, should foreigners currently residing in the United Kingdom have the right to vote? This time we'll start with the Liberal Democrats.
We think that every person that lives in the UK, citizens should have the right to vote. The right to vote is fundamental for democracy, and we can prove this. We would give the decisions made in Parliament back to the people, including immigrants. We can prove this. Asylum seekers who have been waiting in this terrible Tory backlog for over 3 months would have the right to work. That extends to the right to vote.
Terrible Tory backlog. Conservatives, do you have anything to say about this?
I think it's hard to argue with me when I think we're both on the same agreement. I think, of course, all immigrants should be able to vote. They are contributing to our society, they're contributing to our tax, our economy, and they're living with us, they're living among us. And so why should they not be able to vote? They contribute to all of our systems. It does seem a bit ludicrous to me why we should suggest otherwise.
Thank you. Green Party, do you have any opinions on whether foreigners currently residing in the United Kingdom should have the right to vote?
So, as I said previously, Green Party is striding for a fairer country. So we believe that, of course, these people should have a right to vote in the UK. They work, they do all the same things as us. They should have the same rights. And we can back this up as we believe in making a lot easier ways for asylum seekers to get asylum by making safer and quicker routes for all of them.
Green Party, would you like to expand? You say safer, quicker. Could you expand on that for me, please?
So by safe and quick, we mean we will be putting more funding into these asylum seekers, as we know that this is a problem that UK is facing, and we'd like to deal with this by not trying to push them out, but instead letting them in through different ways and making it an easier and more efficient system.
Thank you. And finally, Labour. Your opinions on should foreigners currently residing in the United Kingdom have the right to vote?
I mean, totally in agreement with the Liberal Democrats here. I think the Conservatives use quite an interesting choice of words there that I won't go into. But yes, people who live in this country, who pay tax, who work in this country, they have the right to vote. The political decisions that the politicians are making are directly affecting them. So it would be totally unfair not to give them a say. So yes, of course, they should have the vote.
Perfect. Conservatives, do you have anything to say in response to Labour's comment?
No, I think they're both in agreement with the same point. However, we chose to deliver it.
Slightly different. Okay, we'll move on to our next question, which is from Miller Brown in year 12. Is Miller here? Could you stand and read her question?
Okay. What will you do to end food bank dependency across the country?
For those who didn't hear, that is, what would you do to end food bank dependency across the country? We'll start with the Green Party on this.
So we would like to put in free school meals for all children in schools and free breakfast clubs for children up to year 6. So this would make things a lot easier for working parents, which usually are subject to having to go to food banks and things like that. So this will make them a lot easier for their children and be able to deal with themselves as well.
Thank you. Liberal Democrats, what do you think on what would you do to end food bank dependency across the country?
There's a number of things that cause food bank dependency. Crucially for children, we would extend free school meals to children living in poverty. That's 900,000 more children on free school meals in our first term in office. However, we have to be realistic. The Green Party are charmingly naive to think that we could offer free school meals to every student. In the long term, we would love to offer free school meals for every primary school student to reduce food insecurity, but that comes from a fundamental change and a change in our attitudes.
Charmingly naive, Green Party. Would you like to elaborate on your plans on how you will challenge food bank dependency across the country?
Well, specifically, she was talking about giving free school meals to all children in schools, and we believe we can do this by putting our funding more into schools with 8 billion, including 2 billion to increase pay for teachers. So we would like to really prioritize education. It's one of our top priorities. So that is how we would do it.
Thank you. Conservatives, how and what will you do to end food bank dependency across the country?
Now, before I start on that, I would just like to question back to what a few of the other panelists have said. So I'm all for the idea of giving free school meals and a breakfast club to these children. However, I would just like to go back onto the money side of things. So how would we afford to pay for the food that is given to them? If the parents can't afford it, then who else is paying for it, and where is that then coming from? Then who is running it? Are we going to have to employ staff to come in earlier to help run it, or employ new staff to be able to accommodate for this? I simply don't see how this can be realistic for all primary schools across the UK.
We'll start with Green Party in response to Conservatives' question to you.
Well, that was a lot of questions, but I think we should start with maybe the cost of living crisis is what kind of the root of this, and it's something that maybe your government has caused over these past few years. So to deal with this, we'd like to cut energy bills by improving home insulation, installing low carbon heating systems. So by doing this, people won't have to keep spending money on things that are unnecessary and having to fix the Tories' mistakes, and instead they can spend things on actually.
So once again, you talk about cutting bills. I don't understand where you're then going to get the money to then insulate all of these homes. You keep talking about cut, decrease inflation, decrease this, but I still don't understand where any of this money's come from. You've just given me another tax that you're going to cut.
Sorry, Conservatives, are you talking about your own manifesto there? If I may have an opportunity to answer the original question. So talking about food insecurity, it's a big issue that people are facing. And, you know, the Labour Party will be doing something similar to the other parties, introducing free breakfast clubs for primary school children to reduce the pressure on parents. And unlike the Conservatives, we're going to increase the minimum wage to an actual living wage, so people in work can afford to live. Well. Yes.
So do we.
And for 14 years, the Conservative Party have been determined in nothing more than making the rich richer and the poor poorer, and that needs to change.
In terms of funding, I would also like to say that it would massively benefit. We can cut energy bills by properly taxing oil and gas companies, something which the Conservatives, who are encouraging North Sea oil and gas companies and things which are not only detrimental to our environment, but also negatively impacting the cost of fuel and the cost of energy, we would tax them properly. And that's where the money's coming from. It's as simple as that.
Conservatives, it seems that all of the panelists are in agreement on this question. Would you like to respond to any of the arguments posed against you?
Now, I do understand that, of course, the rich have a lot more income and they have to have these higher tax brackets. I do understand where you are coming from. However, I don't think that is the source of all of this money. As you say, there is a lot of debt that we have to repay, and there is a lot of there's not enough money around. We do understand that, but I don't think that taxing the fewest high percent of people is going to fix the whole of our economy. I don't think that's the way forwards.
Could we explain how bankers' bonuses are working and how Conservatives have just allowed the bankers' bonuses, which is effectively a tax-free salary, millions of pounds in bonuses every year, which top bankers get completely tax-free because of a loophole which the Conservatives have allowed?
Conservatives, your response?
No, I think that's a fair question to ask from the panelists here. In response to that, I would simply say that we can tax these bankers, and with under your manifesto, you get a few £1 million, and that would go into our economy. However, once again, I just think that's short term. We need more sustainable methods of acquiring this money. You'll cut this money and you'll go and blow it on a new policy. And then where do we get from there? I think you're all very short term, and we have to look for the sustainable long term future.
I think you're very brave to talk about blowing money. May I remind you of this Trustee Party's mini budgets, which created a significant black hole in our economy, and we're still yet to recover from that.
However, we're not standing for Liz Truss. Currently, our representative is Rishi Sunak, and I don't believe that he has made that mistake.
But Rishi Sunak would spend £600 million on sending 300 people to Rwanda.
I think I think that migration is a different topic to get into on a different day, as that is a much longer conversation to have.
I think with that, we will move on to the next question. From Isabel Lord in year 9. Yes. How do we know that you are going to meet your promises and policies and not just ignore them once you are elected? And we'll start with Jamie from the Labour Party.
Well, after 14 years, I'm not surprised that people don't have trust in politicians anymore. The Conservatives have made promise after promise after promise, and they've delivered absolutely none of it. In fact, they've taken us completely 10 steps back in terms of, well, everything. You know, this country isn't working. I would say the Labour Party, we have a fully costed manifesto, unlike the other people sat next to me. So we can afford to do what we're promising, and we're only promising what we can do so that we can deliver.
So from that, Jamie seems quite confident. Conservatives, do you have any response as to how you are going to keep your promises once you are elected?
Slightly in response to the Labour Party, as I've outlined before, we have been through many things that a government hasn't seen before, that we have had to navigate. We have had COVID and the energy crisis. We have had to navigate that. However, we have been successful and we have delivered. We did have the furlough scheme. You might not be feeling the cost and the effects of how we've given back that money, but that was a big saver for a lot of families out there. And there must be people in the audience right now that did benefit from that scheme. We did get Brexit done. Once again, even if that's not what you agree with, the country had a referendum, and that is what we then delivered on. And we did promise to get inflation down to 2%, which we have achieved. And so, although it might not feel like it has been perfect and it has been a long road, we do feel like you can trust us and you can trust in our promises, as we have had the likes of Liz Truss, which I cannot fully back. However, we have got Rishi Sunak, and you can trust him.
If I may respond to a couple of your points. During COVID, yes, furlough scheme was an excellent idea. However, a lot of money also went into your friends' pockets, which I thought was quite interesting. And in terms of inflation being reduced to 2%, it was on track to do that, regardless if you took any action.
However, we do think that the tax cuts and the grants and the loans that you are promising, we feel like if that was your government, then these aims would not have been achieved. You would have plummeted the economy.
That is why the Liberal Democrats are the realistic party. It is a fabulous idea to have free school meals for every child, but it's not realistic. We learned from our tuition fee mistake. It wasn't economically viable, and we recognise that. That's why we'd reinstate maintenance grants. And our local Liberal champions, your local MPs, are really representative of that. They are MPs who genuinely care about their constituencies, and we've proved that. Sarah Green from Chesham and Amersham, but advocating for anti-HS2 when the Liberal Democrats technically support HS2. You can see how much we care about our individuals. That's why you should trust our politicians. Others, I can understand not.
It's quite interesting, actually, some of the points you were making. If the Liberal Democrats were to execute all of their promises in their manifesto, they're going to leave the tax burden on track for a post-World War II high, which we can't be having. How do you justify that?
We have a fully costed manifesto, we have a costings document, and I think maybe you're forgetting where we're finding a lot of our money. A lot of our taxes coming from oil and gas companies, banks, the super wealthy, and actually a lot of our policies will be economically beneficial. Of course they will, that's the point. But in terms of things like our booster for insulating homes, that will reduce energy prices because it will make homes warmer for less money. Things like that are genuinely going to benefit the everyday person. And I don't think you can see that with other parties.
I just think that your fiscal plan, quite helpfully for you, neglects to consider the cost estimates for things like your climate plans and things for your plans to have a faster court system. So.
Thank you. Before we move on, let's hear Green Party's opinions on how they are going to meet your promises and policies and not just ignore them once you are elected.
So we will definitely pursue all our promises, as we are a party that's never been in power and we are ready to do this. We have 2 leaders, 1 woman, 1 man. It shows our representation of the whole society and how we believe in your vote and your opinion, and we will go through that.
Perfect.
Can I respond to the Greens very quickly? Sorry, talking a lot. I was just, how are you going to fund all of your promises because according to your fiscal plan, so the financial plans for how they're going to get the money to do certain things, you're going to have a £325 billion funding deficit in 5 years.
Right, yeah. So we want to tax the rich. 100% want to do that. Also, we want to take out funding from places that we don't think is necessary.
But that's included in your fiscal plan, and yet you're still £325 billion down. Where are you finding this money?
So this will be a gradual thing, actually.
The Green Party have found a money tree, have they?
Maybe.
Okay, and with that, we'll move on to Anaya's question from year 10. Anaya, if you're here, could you stand, but just wait for the camera to come towards you and direct your question to the panelists, please.
Do you think that we should rejoin the EU and why?
So panelists, the question was, do you think we should rejoin the EU? I think we'll go to the Green Party with this. Do you think we should rejoin the EU?
I think we definitely should. We would like to rejoin the EU and regrow our trade relationships with all the countries that we have been cut off by from the Tories. We think this is very important as leaving the EU has brought nothing but negativity to the UK. So of course we believe in that, yes.
Thank you. And Liberal Democrats, what do you think? Do you think we should rejoin the EU?
Brexit has been absolutely detrimental to our country. We're falling apart from it. Vital medication in shortage, Brexit. Food prices rising, Brexit. Businesses can't afford to export, Brexit. With us, we will fix our broken relationship with Europe. Again, charmingly naive from the Green Party to say we'll just rejoin, but we cannot do that without rebuilding trust. We would rebuild the trust with Europe, fix our broken relationship, grow trade, cooperate long term, and eventually, when viable, rejoin the single market.
Thank you for that. And Conservative, what about you? What is your opinion on whether we should rejoin the EU?
So I do think it's easy to bring up the fact that of the few flaws that we do have from Brexit. However, this is a system and this is a thing that we did vote for. As a country, once I've said many times, we did have a referendum and this is what people voted for. This is what you voted for. And we enacted that for you. And so we don't feel like the other parties that we should simply force you back into something that as clearly as a nation you don't want. So we're not forcing you back into the EU. We feel like internally we have to work to fix ourselves. We don't think the solution is going back into the EU.
And Labour, in response, do you think we should rejoin the EU?
I think that's an incredibly bold statement from the Conservatives. The few flaws we've had from Brexit, I think it's slightly more than that. But anyway, I agree with the Liberal Democrats. The Greens are being naive. We can't just rejoin. We don't have the trust of the European Union. The process of leaving the EU was an incredible mess. And Boris Johnson pushed for an even tougher Brexit. So similar to the Liberal Democrats, we're going to be rejoining the customs union and working with the single market. And with that, we'll be rebuilding our trust with the European Union.
Thank you, panelists. We have to move on to the next question, which is from Jamie Farrow in year 10. If Jamie is here, could they please stand? Just wait till the camera comes to you and then direct your question to us.
How are you going to be solving the cost of living crisis?
So for those who didn't hear, that question is, how are you going to solve the cost of living crisis? With that, we'll start with Labour. How are you going to solve the cost of living crisis?
I mean, I'm sure all of you feel it. I feel it. The cost of living crisis affects every single person in this room. To the extent in which it affects you does depend, but it's something that the Conservatives caused, essentially. So Labour are going to help fix that. So we're not going to be raising taxes for working people. That means income tax, national insurance, and VAT. And anyone to fund that, because our manifesto is fully costed, we're going to be ending tax breaks for private schools. There'll be 20% and 20% VAT on private school fees. And we'll be closing non-dom loopholes, which I believe the leader of the Conservative Party's wife benefited quite a lot from. So I don't think they'll be doing anything about that. And we'll be introducing windfall tax for the energy companies.
Thank you. And I think the Conservatives should rebut that statement from Jamie with having caused the cost of living crisis. Conservatives, what do you have to say about that?
I don't think it was our party that caused this cost of living crisis. Once again, I think it was the situations that we had to navigate through. We have had the energy crisis. We have had a lot of the economic problems. However, that hasn't stemmed from us reducing your taxes, reducing inflation. I don't see how that's us that have put you in this cost of living crisis. We've only worked to help you. We have think that Rishi did have a clear plan. He guided you through the energy crisis, and he did reduce inflation from 11 to 2%, which he did agree that he was going to do. We are going to introduce 1.6 million new houses, and we're going to invest £20 million into 30 towns to regenerate. So we're not cutting into any green land, which some of the other parties have promised just to build these houses in places we're not sure where they're going to find, but we're going to regenerate new towns to build newer houses within the brownfields of the nation.
If I may respond quickly, very quickly. Your own chancellor has said that you were spending money more than once. I didn't realise you could do that. And the Office for Budget Responsibilities has said £12 billion in your manifesto has already been spent and accounted for. Where are you finding this money to cut taxes, etc.?
As we've said, we have cut your inflation and we are planning on cutting it more. And as we've said, we're not going to be increasing the VAT and the national income tax. However, we do still have taxes, as all the other parties does have on this panel. So we are still getting tax money in, and so that is where it will be coming from.
You are getting tax money, and there have been 27 tax rises under the Conservatives, and those do not impact the richest of the rich more than they impact those who really can't afford it. Under the Liberal Democrats, similar to Labour, we would, when viable, raise the income tax threshold so that fewer families in poverty are paying income tax. We would scrap the cruel two-child benefit, which would increase universal credit and in addition, support the millions of unpaid carers in the country with a carers allowance and further support for them. Poverty in Britain is at its worst, and that's what you get under the Conservatives.
Just one thing for the Liberal Democrats. You've said that you're going to be introducing free personal care. Have you not learned your lesson? Well, learned from the model in Scotland that there are incredible now. So 20 years ago, free personal care was introduced in Scotland. There's now incredibly tight restrictions and eligibility criteria because they cannot afford it. How are you going to prevent the same thing happening here?
Free personal care, we believe, is genuinely going to benefit the country, not only from the perspective of people who require this, but also reducing the NHS backlog. Fewer people in hospital beds when they can be at home receiving personal care is beneficial. It reduces that backlog and it takes the strain off the NHS. We can afford this, and we would not follow the model of the Scottish National Party.
Thank you. Let's get an opinion from the Green Party. How are you going to solve the cost of living crisis?
Well, I would just like to comment on the Conservatives really quick. They say, well, they might have not caused the cost of living crisis. Well, they've definitely increased it, as homelessness has been 61% higher than it was 10 years ago under the Tory government. Anyway, so Greens, we would like to introduce wealth tax on assets above £10 million. So here we would use this money and try and invest it back into people that really need it. We'd also like to raise the national insurance tax for those earning more than £50,270. Then we would cut energy bills and spend 38 billion over 5 years, a gradual, realistic change to improve home insulation and install low carbon heating systems. We'd also like to increase minimum wage to £15 an hour to make a realistic, so people can realistically live. And we'd like to.
I do find it interesting. Sorry, just to say something. I do find it interesting how you said that we have raised homelessness. However, if you look at all the other statistics, other than that one statistic you have mentioned, we have decreased unemployment by 44%. We have decreased crime by 54%, and we have decreased our dependence on fossil fuels by 60%. However, your manifesto does not align with what we have.
But you've reduced the amount of police officers, you've reduced the amount of teachers, you've reduced the amount of GP surgeries. I can't find anything that you haven't actually reduced.
The army by 10,000 as
exactly.
well.
I think, okay, unfortunately, we have run out of time, so we'll have our last question very briefly from Hiba Kumar in year 12. If Hiba could stand, wait for the camera, and then read out your question.
Is it coming home?
So Hiba's question was, is it coming home? We'll quickly start with the Liberal Democrats.
Southgate has not been most popular recently. Well, we recognise the need to play it safe sometimes. I don't know that it's coming home with Southgate. We can all agree we need to try something new on and off the pitch. That is the Lib Dems. Try something new. Please make the game a whole lot better.
And Conservatives, is it coming home?
We do agree, we do think that it is coming home. We do agree that Southgate's performance has not been on point and there might be a need for change. However, that is not a change for the whole England team, such as we do not need a whole change from the Conservative Party. We simply just need to change the way we're doing things. We need to change up Southgate's approach and we just need to change up the approach to our country.
And Greens, is it coming home?
Honestly, who knows at this point? I think it would be a great idea to honestly get rid of Gareth Southgate and find someone new, find real hope and real change by making actual changes and not little ones that we think will just brush up all the mess. So yeah.
Thank you. And Labour, is it coming home?
Well, Gareth Southgate's performance has not been very positive recently. And I think the players in his team, the top people, need to start taking responsibility for their actions. And I do think we need a change. We need a fresh face as the leader of the country. Yeah, we need a change. Something needs to happen and people need to start being held accountable for their actions.
Yes, Jamie.
Thank you. As much as I wish we could continue this debate for longer, I'm afraid we have run out of time. Apologies to anyone who unfortunately didn't get that question answered. As a quick reminder, everyone can vote at lunchtime. Key Stage 3 can vote in the library, Year 10 in the Miller Annex, Year 12 in the Miller Study Area. Thank you very much for watching us, and can I have one final round of applause?